From the original Gino's Pizza and Grill here in Toledo, Ohio. Very happy to go to our bench racing hotline where we are joined by a young man who has been on the show very many times. Ryan McGee from ESPN, the magazine, joins us. Hey, Ryan, how are you?
I'm good. I like that young man stuff. Just keep that up. That's great.
Hey, I tell you, when you compare you to the two old farts sitting here, you are a young man.
Well, you know, it's funny because all these people are like, is Jeff Gordon done? Should Jeff Gordon hang it up? All this stuff. I'm like, no. As long as Jeff Gordon is out there, then I'm still a young guy because he and I came in together. So I keep telling Jeff he can't ever retire.
Hey, that works out well for you. I see here by the USA, or let's see here, where am I? On the ESPN column that you wrote about A.J. Allmendinger, that you are the preeminent drug testing guru. So that's part of the reason that we called you. We don't want to talk just about A.J. Allmendinger. We'll start with that. Now that he has submitted his B test, the question that we had tonight was, even if the B test comes back negative, what does the future hold for A.J. Allmendinger? Is he going to be irreparably harmed by this whole deal, even if he's exonerated?
Well, I mean, I think that the good news is for him is if the B sample comes back negative, you know, the first one was a positive, this one comes back negative, then I think in the public eye, it will certainly help him. Unfortunately, you know, he was kind of borderline as far as whether he was going to return at the end of this year or not. He was on a one-year contract with Penske. So, you know, I don't know. History says that Roger Penske is very loyal, even in tough situations. You know, he continued to pursue Kurt Busch even after Kurt got in trouble with the law. You know, he hung on to Al Unser Jr. for years in the IndyCar series when everyone knew that Al Jr. had some substance abuse problems. So, I mean, he's nothing if not loyal, but I think that the pressure will come from Shell Pennzoil, which is, you know, hey, they dealt with a lot with Kurt Busch, and they don't particularly enjoy the publicity they're getting right now. You know, if AJ is found innocent and comes back into the car, maybe all will be forgiven, but I think it's going to be hard for him to re-up for next year.
Well, the other side of that loyalty coin with Penske is that Sam Hornish has been the good soldier for the last couple of years. Yeah, you know, and done whatever Rogers wanted him to do. I guess driving in Nationwide Series, whatever. Sam has a history with Shell Pennzoil, as a successful history in IndyCar. So that seems to be almost that makes it doubly tough for me to see AJ come back next year. Yeah,
I agree. And the unfortunate thing is AJ's a great guy.
Yeah, we like him a lot.
Yeah, and I hope, you know, we work with him. You know, he does a weekly segment for us on NASCAR Now. AJ and I raced bulldozers against each other in Vegas, you know, just a couple of months ago. He's a great guy. He's a fitness fanatic. Yeah. You know, his wife is a chiropractor. You know, I'm hoping that we will, in 5 days' time, we'll find out that it was a mistake with the A sample and we'll get on with our lives. Yeah. But it's a tough spot for everybody. Everybody's pulling for him. I think that's one of the big differences in this situation and in other sports where they're quick to kind of throw an athlete under the bus. In this situation, a lot of people are pulling for AJ, and quite frankly, I'm a huge Sam Hornish fan. So either way, a good guy I think is going to get that ride. But I'm certainly hoping that AJ ends up back in that car, certainly this year.
Well, if AJ if he is cleared, if that B sample comes back clean and he gets a chance to get back in that car, it really doesn't change what he has to do. He's got to win some races to stay in it right, I think.
Well, you're exactly right, and that's the thing is that, you know, just 2 weeks ago, the questions that a week ago, the questions that I was answering about AJ Allmendinger were, is he going to be back in that car in 2013 just based on performance? Because, quite frankly, he's been a huge letdown as far as what he's done on the racetrack. And we'll point that out quicker than he does. But anyhow, he has bigger problems right now. And like I say, I hope, and I think most people hope, that we get the results back. And like I said, it took about 5 days that we get the results back. And if that B sample comes back negative, then we're all good.
Ryan McGee we're talking to. And, Ryan, let me ask you this about the substances that are involved in the whole policy that NASCAR has. You cover other sports, and do you see that policy as being much larger, the amount of substances which are we'll say banned, I guess is the best word to use, in NASCAR as opposed to, say, football or baseball or any other particular sport?
I think that the list, which is multiple pages in the NASCAR rule book, about 3 or 4 pages, I think that the list itself is pretty similar to what you have in other sports. And Aegis Laboratories in Nashville is the group that NASCAR brought in to help them with this. They're the group that are running the tests on A.J. Allmendinger's sample right now. They work with other sports. And so this is kind of based on the lists from other sports. But the difference is the NASCAR kind of has this one-strike policy. And the argument for that is, and in this column that I wrote that you're talking about, Jeff Gordon has a quote in there from 3 years ago after the Mayfield incident. And what Jeff said was, he said, listen, in other sports, if a guy has a substance abuse problem, he's pretty much just a danger to himself. In motorsports, if a guy has a substance abuse problem, he could potentially kill a bunch of people, whether it's another race car driver or people on pit road or fans or whatever. So it's a much larger responsibility, and thus I think NASCAR is justified in the fact that, they dropped the hammer pretty quick.
Well, Charlie and I commented when we started the show tonight that we were both a little disappointed in the race down at Daytona this past weekend. Seemed like a couple hours of absolutely nothing going on with about 20 minutes of just let's see how many cars we can wreck. I don't know. I don't like to diss on NASCAR because I love NASCAR, but the racing is just not great. And is there been talk, or you get around a lot of these guys, and what's the feeling as far as what's NASCAR going to do? Brian France said, and it's tough to narrow him down to anything. We're going to have shorter races, but is there something in the works to try and make these races a little more exciting?
Well, the shorter races are a huge part of it, and that's something that I've been lobbying for years, and quite frankly, it's something that the drivers have been lobbying for, and they'll be the first ones to admit it. I mean, I've had conversations with multiple drivers and some big names, guys that won championships, that say there's no reason to kind of push the button until, it's time for that last pit stop, and the rest of the time you're kind of taking care of your gear, and I think we saw that gets even more exaggerated, in a plate race, certainly at Daytona, because those guys weren't going to wreck early, and they weren't going to wear their car out early. They were going to wait until it mattered, and that's exactly what we saw. So I think that shortening these races, this weekend in New Hampshire, it's a 300-mile race, a 301. Nobody misses that extra 100 miles, and certainly that extra 200 miles. And at Pocono, nobody has missed that 100 miles that went away. And you guys know at Michigan for years, they were 500-mile races. Yep. And when they cut them back to 400, nobody's missed those other 100 miles. So I think that'll help, because I think if you can shorten the distance between the green flag and the checkered flag, then we've seen in the past, it makes those guys run a little bit harder than they normally would. And then I think the other thing, too, is I think a lot of people hope that the new car is going to help, especially when we get on these mile-and-a-half racetracks, these aero tracks. And we'll see. Depending on what engineer you talk to, some say it won't make a big difference, and some say make a huge difference. So we'll see.
Well, I guess I have to ask you about that as far as the cars being all very, very similar. It just seems like, 35 years ago, there were guys who were winning races by 8 laps. And obviously that guy was going out and he was racing as hard as he could the whole time out there, and everybody else was trying to catch this guy. And now, as you just said, these drivers are sitting in a position where we've got a 400-mile race.
Coasting
we don't really
300 miles.
Yeah, 300. The first 300 don't mean squat.
And they'll tell you that. They'll tell you that in a heartbeat. And I think that's why you start to hear some guys talk about, heat races and half times. Also, I don't think any of that's going to happen. Personally, I think that belongs on a Saturday night short track. I don't think it belongs in the major leagues and Sprint Cup Series, but I think shortening the races would help that. But yeah, the guys will admit, and a lot of times they won't say it, on the record, but they'll certainly tell you behind closed doors or in the motor coach lot that the races are just too long, and they don't really. It's not that they don't try, but they don't really, I'll say, push the button until they start getting within the orbit of that last pit stop.
There was just a little bit of news supposedly that Penske was going to sell his engine program back to Chrysler, Dodge / Fiat, and there might be something much like the TRD deal for Toyota for next year. Have you gotten any feeling as to what is in store for Dodge in 2013?
Well, I think that Roger probably tried to swing a deal where he could build the engines for Dodge. And I don't know that Dodge was too crazy about that idea. But as you guys know, Roger will run multiple makes over multiple series. Right. But I don't think anybody was willing to do that, in the same series. So, yeah, I think there's definitely something to that. I think it's Dodge's only chance. I wrote a column, right after Vegas, after they unveiled that Charger, which is a good-looking piece. And I said, I think that Dodge should kind of embrace the little guy and go gather up all these kind of mid-pack, 20th to 30th in points teams,
right,
and throw a little money behind them and give them some engines and, kind of be the Rebel Alliance against the Death Star. And hopefully, if they can get this engine deal done, that'll happen because none of those small teams can build their own engines. That's always been the hang-up.
That's a terrific idea. I hope it happens.
Yeah, no, I shamelessly told everybody at Dodge, read this story because I think this is what you guys ought to do. So yeah. we'll see if they actually read it or not.
Well, it may be the McGee law if that's what it happens. We'll name it for you. Before we let you go, Ryan, we got the most important questions of the evening yet to come, and those all revolve around baseball and the All-Star Game.
Yeah. So should this game really decide who has the home field advantage in the World Series?
No, and I worked for Fox when David Hill put that idea out on the table, and I was kind of behind it in the beginning. And as an American League guy, I thoroughly enjoyed it for years when the AL was winning that game and they did get home field advantage. But at the end of the day, it hasn't seemed to have had much of an effect on the game on the field, which is what they were shooting for, and it seems to have caused more of an argument with fans than it has enthusiasm. So. Maybe that idea has kind of run its course. But regardless of home field advantage or not, I'm an American League guy, and I'll be pulling for the AL tonight like I always do.
There you go.
And I'm sure you were pulling for the win. I almost said it again. I've done it so many times. I keep calling him Cecil Fielder for Prince to win the home run derby last night. I did it three times.
His collar got a little tight, I think, last night.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to watch?
My daughter loves Prince Fielder. She's 7. Doesn't know a thing about the Tigers. Doesn't know that much about baseball, but she loves Prince Fielder. There's the guy. Where's my guy? That's all she said last night. And how great was that? How great was the whole thing with them booing Robinson Cano? That was so funny. I thought that was hilarious.
It's funny. My daughter was probably about your daughter's age when Cecil Fielder was playing for the Tigers. And Cecil is my daughter's favorite player all time. And now we were at the game on Sunday, and she had to get her Prince Fielder jersey. So there we go.
Well, Ryan, thanks so much for spending time with us as always. We'll talk to you again soon.
Anytime, guys. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks,
take
Ryan.
care. Ryan
McGee
from ESPN, the magazine.
I love his idea about what Dodge could do next year in Cup. I think that would be something you could get behind as a fan.